There are many advantages and disadvantages to using paper piecing as a quilting technique. Let's look at the advantages first. When you paper piece, it is very easy for you to be accurate. In this quilt, there's pineapple blocks that are about 3 inches big. And each one of these 3-inch pineapple blocks have, I think, 60-something fabrics in them. There's no way that I'd be able to piece these blocks unless I paper pieced them. I can't be that accurate. So paper piecing allows you to sew very tiny pieces together accurately. When you paper piece, there are no 1/4-inch seams, and there's no precision cutting. So you can take scraps of fabric like this and not worry about cutting them out and not worrying about getting that perfect 1/4-inch seam, which is very relaxing for most people because often people worry about, did I cut these pieces out properly, or am I sewing this perfect 1/4-inch seam? And last but not least, when you paper piece, there's a foundation that you're working on. And because you have that foundation, you're able to use fabrics other than cotton that in your quilt. You wouldn't probably use something like this because it would be too difficult to sew to cotton. But with that foundation underneath, you're able to put in things like this lame here. This red piece was added because I had a foundation underneath to sew it to. Let's look at the disadvantages now. When you paper piece, it can be very confusing at first. You're going to end up with something looking like this. And you are also going to be sewing on the back of the fabric and on the back of the paper, and the fabric's going to be on the other side. It looks like a bunch of nothing when you're sewing on it. So here's another one. So it can be very confusing. And not only is it confusing, but after you sew, you're going to have to take that paper out, which isn't the easiest thing to do. So you're going to have to tear out each one of those seams. And sometimes the paper comes out easy. These are pretty big pieces here. And sometimes you're going to need tweezers to pull out the fabric or the paper. If you've sewn your fabric onto a foundation other than paper, then you can't take this out. It stays in there, which means there's going to be added thickness, which makes it more difficult when you go to quilt this into your block. Of course, if you're just using it for little picture frames or things like that, you don't have to worry about that foundation. Not all quilt blocks can be paper pieced. There's thousands of blocks on the market that have patterns for paper piecing, but simple blocks like this 9-patch here is not a block that can be paper pieced. So there's many blocks that you can't use this technique for. The alignment of fabric is very difficult. So in this block, I've used these stripes, and I wanted the stripes going in this direction. If I tried to do that when I paper piece this small block, if I tried to align the stripes, it'd be very difficult. So paper piecing is not good for everything, but I hope I haven't persuaded you to give up on this. I find great joy in making these small squares. I use them in cards. I use them in picture frames. I use them to make small quilts like this one. And I've also used this technique for projects other than quilting. It's allowed me to accurately sew pieces that I would normally shy away from.